will never love you. Not after everything you did to me.
Israel's face fell. He didn't cry, he didn't argue, he just nodded and walked away. Well, how would you feel when the senior who punished you all the time in school even for no reason, professes love to you? It sounds ridiculous, unbelievable and almost insulting. That's exactly how Judith felt the first time Israel, the same boy who once made her sweep the assembly ground under the rain, whispered, "I love you." But before we get there, let me take you back to where it all began, when the punishments were still fresh, and love was nowhere in the picture. Judith was just 11 years old when she got into JSS 1. She was bright, quiet, well-behaved, and the kind of girl who would rather get to school an hour early than risk arriving 1 minute late. Her best friend Carol was bubbly, mischievous, and always dragging Judith into her little adventures. The two were inseparable. What made things even easier was the fact that Carol's older brother, Israel, was in JSS 3 and was made junior head boy. In their minds, that meant immunity. After all, family ties came with benefits. But they were wrong. From Judith's very first week in school, Israel made it his personal mission to make her life miserable. He didn't care that she was his sister's best friend. He didn't care that Judith was always on time or always well-dressed. All he saw was an opportunity to torment her, and he grabbed it with both hands. If the school gate closed at 7:30 a.m., Judith would arrive at 7:29 and still be told she was late. If Carol forgot her assignment, Judith would be blamed. If there was noise in the class, Judith would be the one called out to kneel under the sun. It got to a point where other seniors don't need reasons to punish her themselves. Once Israel tells them to deal with her, that is enough. Judith tried to understand it. She really did. Why would someone who saw her in his house nearly every week, who watched her play games with his sister in their compound, act like he hated her so much? At first, she thought it was just a senior being strict. But this wasn't discipline, it was deliberate, targeted and cruel. "I don't get it," she told Carol one afternoon after another humiliating punishment session. "Your brother acts like I killed someone in his family." Carol, chewing a piece of meat pie, just shrugged. "He's like that sometimes. Maybe he's trying to be serious with his post. But trust me, Israel is actually sweet. He's the one that makes tea for mommy when she has a headache." "Then maybe his sweetness runs out when he sees me," Judith replied, bitterly. "I hate him, Carol. I really do." That's how hard the hate festered. It brewed slowly, becoming a shadow that followed Judith through every class, every assembly, every lunchtime. Whenever she saw Israel's tall frame with that overconfident walk, her stomach turned. Even after he moved to SS1 and his prefect title became invalid, he still sent instructions through the new juniors to punish her, as if he couldn't bear the idea of her breathing freely. It was so bad that Judith once considered transferring schools. "He's just one person," her mother had said, unaware of the full story. "Don't let a boy chase you away from your future." But it didn't feel like just one person. Israel was everywhere, like a storm cloud that followed her around while everyone else danced in the sunshine. Yet, through it all, Judith never reported him. Because every time she tried, something would come up, a forged offense, a group noise punishment, a fake lateness. There was always just enough evidence to make her look guilty. It was like he knew how to stay 5 steps ahead. And that made her hate him even more. But there's something Judith or anyone didn't know. The truth is that Israel was playing a dangerous, foolish game. You see, Israel wasn't punishing Judith because he hated her. Quite the opposite. He liked her. No, scratch that, he loved her. From the moment he saw her during Carol's 10th birthday party, standing shyly in the corner with powdered cake on her nose, he felt something shift. But Israel had a problem, pride. He couldn't bring himself to be vulnerable, to say, "Hi, I like you. Let's be friends." So instead, it became her nightmare. A walking contradiction, hiding affection behind aggression. The more drawn he felt to her, the more he tried to convince himself and everyone else that he didn't care. You see, people think scars only live on skin, but sometimes, the deepest ones live in silence, unseen, untouched, but never unfelt. That's the kind Judith carried. And it almost cost her everything. It was the second term of JSS 2 when the breaking point came. Back then, Israel was already in SS1, and though his post as junior head boy had expired, but his influence hadn't. Everyone still called him Senior Israel, and they still listened when he said, "Punish her." One morning, Judith arrived at school just 10 minutes late. A faulty tricycle had broken down on the narrow street leading to the school gate, causing a chain of delays. Other students arrived late too, but none of them were told to kneel in front of the assembly hall under the sun, only Judith as usual. What made that day worse was what followed. The new junior prefect on duty, trying to impress Israel, forced Judith to kneel with her hands up for a full hour. Her skirt was soaked in red sand, her arms ached, and when it was over, she was sent to class without a chance to clean up. Her classmates laughed. The same classmates she helped with homework the night before. That laughter broke something inside her. Later that day, in the library, she hid between dusty shelves and cried for 30 minutes. The librarian walked by and didn't notice. Nobody did except Caro. She found Judith with swollen eyes and clenched fists. "I can't do this anymore, Caro," she whispered. "Every day feels like war. And I'm the only soldier without a weapon." Caro hugged her tightly. "Then leave. Come to our house. Mom will talk to your parents. We'll help you change school." Judith hesitated. And for a moment, she considered it. A life without Israel. Without punishment. Without fear. That night, she wrote a letter. It wasn't a goodbye. It was more like a scream on paper. She poured everything out, how tired she was, how alone she felt, and how the person who made her life hardest was someone she once admired. She tucked the letter in her diary and went to bed. But she didn't leave the next day because that night, she dreamed of her late father. He was sitting on the bench outside their compound, the same place they used to talk before he passed away. In the dream, he said only one thing: "Don't run from pain. Make it fear you." When she woke up, she tore up the transfer form she had secretly filled. She was staying, not because she was strong, but because she had a point to prove. And she did. She rose. She concentrated more on her studies and her grades went from excellent to elite. She was made the junior head girl in JSS 2 third term, a role only given to the most disciplined, well-liked, and academically strong student. Her leadership became the standard. She learned how to speak softly but strike powerfully, with her words, her presence, her achievements. What Israel tried to destroy, he had accidentally helped build. Judith entered JSS 3 with that same energy and Israel moved into SS 2. Everything was going a bit smoother, at least Israel wasn't in any position to punish her by himself. Plus, she is now a prefect. But at the end of third term, while Israel was still in SS 2, he was made the senior prefect. The very air between them thickened. Gone were the days of one punishing the other with impunity. Now, they had to share a table, attend prefect meetings together and handle school events side by side. For the first time ever, they had to treat each other as equals. Judith wasn't happy about it. "They've put me in a cage with a lion," she murmured one afternoon, staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. But something was different. Israel was quiet. He didn't back orders anymore and didn't point fingers. He even let her have the final say in a disciplinary meeting once. And while Judith found that suspicious, others began to notice something else. The way Israel looked at her. It wasn't hate. Not anymore. But Judith couldn't see that. All she saw was years of humiliation, tears behind the school block, being blamed, shamed, and mocked, all because of him. And as Israel's heart softened, Judith stayed locked. For her, the past was still present. And love was impossible. Some schools have cold wars between students. But at Kingdom High, we had a full-blown civil war between two prefects, Israel and Judith. From the outside, it looked like a perfect setup. The senior prefect, Israel, was intelligent, respected, and intimidating. The junior head girl, Judith, was brilliant, composed, and deeply admired by both teachers and students. They were a leadership dream team. But behind the scenes, it was fire and gasoline. Every morning meeting turned into a silent battle of power. Every joint task, a field of tension. It began barely a week into resumption. There was a school-wide sanitation exercise, and both Israel and Judith were expected to lead different arms of the campaign. Judith, meticulous as ever, had drawn up a schedule that allocated time slots for every class to clean specific zones. She laminated copies and gave one to every class captain. But the next morning, Israel tore her structure apart. "We are starting with SS1 and SS2. JSS students can come later," he announced in front of all prefects. Judith's eyes narrowed. "But that's not the plan we agreed on." "I changed it," Israel said calmly, not even sparing her a glance. "You changed it without telling me. I don't need to ask permission to lead. After all, you are still my junior." The room fell quiet. The other prefects looked from one to the other, unsure whether to run or get popcorn. Judith held her breath, not because she was scared, but because she was angry. That old familiar band came rushing back. He's doing it again, undermining her, dismissing her, humiliating her. But this time, she wouldn't let him. She stood up slowly, face unreadable. "We are not doing this," she said. "Not this time." And she walked out. The tension lingered in the room like perfume, sweet for some, sour for others. Israel watched her leave and bit his lower lip hard. He hadn't meant to start a fight. Not really. But something about Judith's confidence, it unnerved him, attracted him, pushed him to poke at her walls, just to see if she would let him in. But all she ever did was raise them higher. Coro noticed it before anyone else. "You know you've turned Judith into your personal boxing ring," she said to Israel one evening at home. "I'm not hitting her. You are. Just not with fist, but with power plays, with disrespect, with mixed signals." Israel didn't reply. His chest ached in a way he couldn't explain. Meanwhile, Judith threw herself deeper into her responsibilities. She stayed back after school to help juniors who were struggling with their assignments. She checked every class for compliance and even handled the health committee when the school nurse traveled. The teachers loved her, the students adored her, and Israel watched from a distance, confused, angry and regretful because for the first time, the girl he used to control was now outshining him in every way. And it wasn't her fault, it was his. He had turned admiration into resentment, and now she shone so brightly, he could barely look at her without feeling like a fraud. One Friday afternoon, it reached a boiling point. Judith had organized a cleanup inspection, and one of Israel's young friends in JSS 2 failed to meet the hygiene standard. As protocol demanded, Judith wrote his name down for punishment. Israel tore the list. "I already handled him," he said coolly, arms folded. "You what?" "I said I've handled it. You don't need to worry. I followed the procedure, Israel. This has nothing to do with you because this is my department and you are overstepping." Israel smiled. "Judith, I didn't overstep. I am the senior prefect and every department is mine." That was it. She stepped back, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "No, you don't get to silence me anymore." He blinked, stunned. "You bullied me for years," she continued, voice firm but shaking slightly. "You humiliated me every chance you got. And now you want to act like we are suddenly partners. You don't get to rewrite history." "Judith," Israel called. "No, don't say my name like we're friends. We're not." She turned and walked away, her back straight, her heart racing. That night, Israel didn't sleep. The guilt kept replaying like a broken record. Every punishment, every smirk, every time he stood by while others made her cry, just to hide the fact that her presence made his heart beat faster. He had loved her since he was 13, but he showed it in all the wrong ways. And now she hated him with a fire he couldn't put out. The next week, he tried something different. He started to show up to meetings early. He supported her suggestions instead of countering them. He even took time to mentor the younger prefects, something Judith was known for. Judith noticed the change, but she didn't trust it. "Don't fall for it," she told herself. "It's probably another game." But it wasn't. Israel was changing, slowly, quietly. Not to win her over, but because he needed to forgive himself. Because the truth was heavy, and it haunted him daily. He didn't hate her. He never did. He was just a coward in disguise. If you've ever spent years looking down on someone, thinking they were beneath you, there's one thing that will surely humble you, watching them rise higher than you ever expected. That was Israel's new reality. The once quiet girl he used to punish for fun was now the talk of the school. Judith didn't just wear her prefect badge, she wore it with a kind of grace that made even the seniors listen. Her words carried weight, her presence turned heads, and most annoyingly to Israel, her laugh had become rare. He missed it. That light giggle she used to share with Coro under the mango tree after school, back when they were in JSS 1. Now, her face was always tight, polite, distant, especially whenever he came around. He had tried, God knows he'd tried to start conversations again. To be nice. To undo the years. But she wouldn't let him close. And honestly, could he blame her? While still trying to get close, the school's annual cultural day came. Every prefect was required to lead a group representing a tribe in Nigeria. Judith was placed in charge of the Yoruba group, while Israel led the Igbo team. From the moment preparations began, the rivalry was reborn. Israel wanted to win, not just for himself, but to show Judith that she wasn't the only one who could shine. He rehearsed with his team like they were auditioning for a Nollywood film. His boys wore red caps, beat drums, and memorized speeches about Igbo heritage with soldier-like discipline. Judith, on the other hand, brought culture to life. She taught her team traditional Yoruba songs and dance. She printed rappers for her girls, coached their diction, and even convinced a parent to lend them a talking drum. When her group performed during rehearsals, even teachers came to watch. "She's taking this personal," one prefect whispered. Israel noticed, but instead of hating it, something stirred in him again. Admiration. One afternoon, after a long practice session, Judith sat alone under the tree near the school's abandoned music room. She was fanning herself with a folded script when Israel walked by. He hesitated, then walked back. "Your group is really good," he said. She didn't look up. "Thanks. I mean it." "I know," she replied quickly. The silence between them stretched. Then Judith added without looking at him, "Are you expecting me to say the same thing back?" "No," he replied quickly. "I just wanted to talk." Now she looked up, her eyes sharp. "You had years to talk, Israel. Years to treat me like a human being, but you preferred punishment over conversation. I didn't know how to talk to you." "That's not my problem." It wasn't anger in her voice, it was pain. Deep, warm pain that no apology could erase in one afternoon. And that shook him. He sat down beside her, slowly, careful not to get too close. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Judith. I just want you to know I regret everything. Regret doesn't fix trauma." That line hit him like a slap. Israel opened his mouth but closed it again. What could he say? That he bullied her because she was beautiful? Because her presence made his heart race? That her laughter haunted his dreams? No. That would sound selfish. So he just sat there, quietly, as she stood up and walked away. And for the first time in his life, Israel was speechless. Later that evening, Carol found him sitting alone in his room, staring at nothing. "She confronted you, didn't she?" "She destroyed me." He looked at her. "Why didn't you tell me I was ruining her life?" "I did. But you thought it was a game." And just like that, it all hit him again. His cruelty, marked as power. His love, marked as discipline. His silence, marked as strength. But now, there was nothing left to hide behind, because Judith had become everything he admired and nothing he deserved. A few weeks after that confrontation, Judith entered SS1. She had officially crossed over to the senior block, new uniform, new class, new responsibilities. Her reign as junior head girl had ended, and yet, her influence hadn't. In fact, the seniors treated her like one of their own. Even some SS3 boys now called her Madam Head Girl. And Israel painfully noticed. He noticed the way people leaned in when she spoke, how teachers gave her extra responsibilities usually reserved for the top seniors. And most of all, he noticed the boys, especially one, Kenneth. Kenneth was charismatic, playful, and undeniably drawn to Judith. He sat near her in class, walked her halfway to the bus stop, sometimes even waited after school just to talk. Israel didn't like it. Scratch that, he hated it. But he had no right to complain. He had built a wall between him and Judith with his own hands. Now someone else was climbing over it with ease. Still, it burned. So, one afternoon after classes had closed, Israel stood near the school's basketball court, watching Judith laugh at something Kenneth said. His heart twisted. He turned to Coral, who had just walked by. "I can't take this anymore," he muttered. "Then fix it," she replied. "I don't know how." "Start by telling her the truth." And that was it. No long lecture. No sugarcoating. Just a cold push into the deep end. That weekend, he wrote a letter. Not just any letter, a confession. He started with the truth that he had liked her since JSS1. That every punishment, every insult, every silent stare, was him trying foolishly to get her attention. He admitted he had no courage to be kind, so he chose cruelty. He apologized for every time he made her cry, every late punishment, every slap of shame she didn't deserve. He told her he didn't expect forgiveness. He just wanted her to know. No signature. Just 3 words at the end. "I'm truly sorry." He folded it. Took a deep breath. And on Monday morning, he slipped it into her locker. The moment was done. Now he had to wait. Judith found the letter after lunch break. At first, she thought it was from Kenneth. The handwriting was clean but unfamiliar. But when she read the first line, her stomach turned. Her hands shook. By the time she finished the second paragraph, Her eyes were glossy, and by the end she couldn't breathe. She stared at the paper, reading the last 3 words over and over. I'm truly sorry. Her heart didn't know what to feel. Her mind wanted to scream. She folded the letter slowly and slid it into her notebook. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the classroom windows, Israel waited behind the block where she always passed to the bus stop. When she appeared, he stepped out. She froze. He said nothing. Just looked at her, vulnerable, scared, real. She pulled the letter from her bag and held it up. This is what you should have said years ago. You made me feel like dirt, Israel. For years. He bowed his head. I know. Esther laughed angrily. And now what? I'm supposed to thank you for finally realizing I'm human. No, he whispered. I'm not asking for anything. She looked at him. Not the senior. Not the prefect. Just the boy. There was something broken in his eyes. Something honest. She shook her head. You can't erase what you did with an apology. I'm not trying to erase it. Then what do you want? His voice was barely audible. I just want you to see me differently someday. I mean, I love you so much. It has been there for years. Even if you don't love me back, at least, love me like you love other students. Judith's heart skipped. Then she said the words that had been buried inside her for so long, words that didn't come from anger, but from pain. I will never love you. Not after everything you did to me. Israel's face fell. He didn't cry. He didn't argue. He just nodded and walked away. You know, love can be a cruel magician. It makes the wrong people look right, and the right ones seem invisible until reality exposes what feelings tried to hide. For Judith, that moment came on a rainy Thursday, just 2 weeks after she told Israel she could never love him. It started innocently enough. She and Kenneth had grown closer than she ever expected to be with anyone after what she had been through. Kenneth was charming, funny, and loud in all the ways Israel wasn't. He never made her feel small. He gave her space and compliments. They started exchanging class notes, then snacks, then phone numbers. One day, Kenneth invited her to a group study session at a senior classmate's house. Judith hesitated. It was a weekday evening, and her mom rarely allowed her out after school. But after some pleading, and with Coro vouching for the plan, she agreed. The study session was going fine until it wasn't. The group turned out to be just 3 boys and her. The textbooks were replaced with loud music and open bottles of soft drinks. Kenneth, sensing her discomfort, acted like everything was normal. But Judith's gut screamed otherwise. I thought we came here to study, she said. We will, Kenneth grinned. But you've been too tense lately. Let's chill for a bit. Then his hand slid across her shoulder. She froze. When she tried to stand, he pulled her back. Relax. It's just vibes. Let's have fun. Judith was shocked. No, she said firmly. Let go. But he didn't. He started hugging her and tried to kiss her forcefully. But she pushed him away with all her strength and raised her voice, loud enough for the other boys to turn. She grabbed her bag and stormed out into the rain, heart pounding, tears mixing with raindrops as she ran. She had never felt so stupid and unsafe. That night, Judith didn't sleep. Her mind replayed everything, his words, his touch, his smirk. And then Israel's letter. The softness in his voice, the regret in his eyes. The way he didn't ask for anything. The way he let her say her truth and still walked away with dignity. Suddenly, the boy she had hated for so long didn't look like the villain anymore. He looked like the only one who had the guts to admit he was wrong. The next day at school, Kenneth tried to approach her. She walked past him like he was air. And that same afternoon, she did something she never thought she'd do. She went looking for Israel. She found him in the SS3 block, helping another prefect organize files for the school inspection. When she entered the room, he stood up quickly, surprised. Their eyes locked. I need to talk to you, she said quietly. Okay, but alone. They stepped outside into the corridor. Judith took a deep breath. I was wrong about something, she began. Israel frowned. About what? About you being the worst person I ever met. He blinked. She continued. You were cruel, no doubt. You hurt me, but you owned it. And that's something I didn't realize how rare it is until someone else hurt me worse. What happened? She didn't explain. She didn't need to. Her eyes said enough. Israel clenched his jaw. Did someone touch you? She looked away. And that's when he got it. His fist tightened. But he didn't interrupt. Instead, Judith spoke again. I'm not saying I forgive everything. But maybe you're not who I thought you were anymore. Israel's breath caught in his throat. A moment of silence stretched between them, long, heavy, filled with emotion neither could explain. Then Judith said something that surprised them both. Can we start over? Israel's heart stopped. He nodded, voice barely a whisper. Yes. It wasn't a love story yet, not even close. But it was the first brick in the bridge they never thought they would build. And sometimes that's all it takes. You know, some wounds don't come from hate. They come from fear, confusion, and hearts that never learned how to speak the language of affection. And sometimes, when we finally understand the truth behind the pain, it doesn't erase what was done but it softens what we feel. For Judith, that moment of softening came on a cloudy Wednesday weeks after. Things had shifted between them. No, they weren't friends yet, but they were no longer enemies. When they crossed paths, Judith no longer turned her face. When they had prefect duties, they now walked in silence instead of hostility. And one day, when Judith was handling a sanitation dispute, Israel stepped in, not to override her decision, but to support it. It was beautiful but confusing. Coro, of course, saw it before anyone else. I think he's still in love with you, she said one evening while they walked home. Judith scoffed. Love? After all those years? Yes. People who feel nothing don't carry guilt for that long, and they definitely don't write letters like that. Judith didn't respond, because deep inside, a question had started growing, one that refused to leave her alone. Why did he choose to punish me in the first place? That weekend, curiosity got the best of her. She texted him, "Can we talk? There's something I need to understand." He replied almost instantly. "Okay, let's meet tomorrow after school behind the chapel block." The next day, she found him waiting, hands in pockets, posture awkward, like he'd been rehearsing 100 ways to speak. Judith didn't waste time. "Why me?" she asked softly. "From all the juniors in school, why was it me you always punished?" Israel looked at her, then away, then back again. And finally he spoke. "I remember the first day you followed Coro home. You were wearing a pink sweater. Your shoes were too big for your legs, and your voice cracked when you said hello to me." Judith blinked. She remembered that day too. "I have never seen someone so different," he continued. "You were calm, weren't loud or fake like the other girls in my class. You were just you. And it scared me." "Scared you?" He nodded. "Because I was just a boy with a lot of pride and no emotional sense. I didn't know how to talk to girls. I thought if I made you notice me, even if it was for the wrong reasons, at least I wouldn't be invisible." Judith's heart thudded. "I told myself I was just doing my duty as a prefect," Israel said. "But the truth is, I was hiding behind power because I was too much of a coward to say, 'I like you. Be my friend too.'" Silence hung like a curtain. Then he added, "And the day I truly hated myself was the day you cried alone by the library and I saw you." Judith froze. "You saw me?" "I saw you and I walked away." Her chest tightened. "I wanted to go to you, but I thought, what if she spits in my face? So I did what I always did, I acted tough. But when I saw you win best student that term I broke. Because I realized that all I have ever done was hold back someone who was already stronger than me." A lump rose in Judith's throat. She hadn't expected this. Not the detail, honesty, or the heartbreak in his voice. He looked at her now, wide open, completely vulnerable. "I'm not saying all this to win you," he whispered. "I just want you to know the truth, because you deserved better. From the start." Judith felt something strange. It wasn't forgiveness, not fully. It wasn't love, not yet. But it was a softening. A warmth, tiny door creaking open after years of being shut. "I needed to hear that," she said gently. "Thank you." Then she turned to leave. But just before walking away, she paused, looked over her shoulder, and said, "Maybe someday, I'll see you differently." Israel didn't smile, but he exhaled, because for the first time, someday sounded possible. It had been weeks since Israel's confession. She started noticing the little things. How he stopped walking ahead of everyone like he ruled the school. How he listened more than he talked. How he helped juniors now not to impress anyone, but because he genuinely wanted to. And she forgave. In that forgiveness, a new kind of friendship started to grow. One rooted in honesty, quiet respect, and a strange kind of comfort that only two people with a long, messy history could share. They started talking after school again. Not every day but enough to notice. Judith even caught herself smiling at some of his jokes. Laughing, sometimes, when no one was watching. Coro noticed, of course. "So, are you two official now?" she teased one day, bumping Judith with her elbow. Judith rolled her eyes. "Please." Coro smiled. "But you like him." Judith frowned. "I didn't say that." Coro smirked. "You didn't have to. Your smile is loud." Judith ignored her. But deep down, she knew Coro wasn't wrong. She was starting to like him. And that's what scared her most. Because liking Israel meant risking the peace she had finally built inside her. It meant opening doors that had been shut with locks made from pain. It meant trusting him again. And she wasn't sure she was ready. But Israel was ready. One evening, after helping her pack chairs in the hall after a prefect's meeting, he stopped her just outside the staff room. His voice was nervous, almost boyish. "Judith, can I ask you something?" She turned, curious. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "Would you be my girlfriend?" For a full 5 seconds, Judith just stared at him. Not with anger, not with fear, but with clarity. And then, slowly, she shook her head. "No." Israel blinked. His breath hitched, and he quickly masked it with a small nod. "Okay, you're a good guy, Israel, and I care about you. A lot more than I used to, but I'm not ready to hand over my heart yet." He tried to smile. "It's fine. I get it." She stepped closer. "You once took my power away. Now I'm taking it back. I decide how this story goes. And right now I choose me." He didn't respond because what could he say? She wasn't cruel about it. She wasn't bitter. She just told her truth. Calmly, firmly, and he had to respect that. That night, for the first time, Israel felt what Judith had once felt for years. The ache of wanting someone who didn't want you back. It hurt. More than he expected. But in that pain came peace because he finally understood what it meant to love someone without expecting a reward. He didn't avoid her after that. In fact, their friendship grew deeper. They studied together, laughed together, even worked on a school project that ended up being selected for the state competition. People began to whisper again. But this time, Israel said nothing. He was content just being close. Even if that's all it would ever be. Judith, on the other hand, felt lighter than she had in years. She was no longer bound by bitterness. No longer weighed down by anger or revenge fantasies. She had faced her pain, stood up to it, and taken back her power. And in doing so, she became something Israel had never seen before. Unreachable. That's what made it hurt more. Every time she smiled at someone else. Every time she walked away just a second too early. Every time her phone buzzed and he wished it was him. The pain was sharp, but quiet. Israel never showed it. Not even to Coro. Because some love stories are written in full, others are lived in fragments. And for now, this was his. Then came the final term. Graduation was near. Israel was preparing to leave Kingdom High, and everything suddenly felt like a countdown. The last interhouse sports, the last prefect meeting and the last exam. The last time Judith would see him in that uniform that once symbolized power and pain but now carried the face of a boy who had changed. One afternoon, she found him sitting alone in the empty hall after prize-giving rehearsals. She walked in silently, and he looked up. "Hey," he said, voice soft. "Hey," she replied. "Practicing your award speech." He smiled faintly. "More like practicing how to survive seeing you every day and pretending I'm okay." The words landed between them like a confession they both knew was true. Judith sat beside him. "I don't regret saying no," she said gently. "I needed that moment, to feel in control." "I know." Then Judith smiled. "But I do think about you." His eyes met hers. "I think about how you changed, how patient you've been, how you never once tried to push me into anything after I said no. I meant it when I said I respected your decision." "I know," she whispered. "That's why it hurts. Because if you had been a jerk it would have been easier to keep my heart locked." They went silent. Then, before either of them could say more, a prefect burst in. "Israel, come to the staff room now. They are calling all SS3 prefects for a meeting." He stood up, dazed, the moment between them slipping through their fingers like sand. As he walked out, Judith watched him go and wondered. Was she still protecting herself, or was she now protecting him from false hope? Later that evening, Caro stormed into Judith's room, holding her math textbook. "Enough," she said. "You like him." Judith stared. What are you talking about? You're in denial. You said no to protect yourself, fine. But now you're just punishing yourself. Judith looked down. I know you, Coro said, her voice softer now. You don't cry over boys, but you've cried over Israel twice this week. I saw you. Judith blinked fast, fighting tears. I don't want to be someone who forgives too quickly, she whispered. What if I go all in and get hurt again? Coro touched her hand. Judith, people change. And sometimes the ones who broke us are also the ones who want to rebuild us. Judith didn't respond, but deep inside, something clicked. She realized she had forgiven him long ago. She had just been waiting for a sign to trust her own heart again. Graduation days were strange. They feel like endings, and yet, in some way, they're beginnings wrapped in final goodbyes. That's how it felt at Kingdom High the day Israel's name echoed across the assembly ground one last time. It was a sunny Friday, and the whole school was gathered under the white canopy for the farewell and award ceremony. Parents in colorful attires. Teachers dressed like royalty. Students in pressed uniforms, fanning themselves with printed programs. The moment had arrived, and the award for most outstanding senior prefect goes to Israel Emmanuel. The applause erupted. Some stood. Judith clapped quietly and steadily, but her heart was a mess. She watched him walk up to the podium with that calm stride. The same boy who once punished her for nothing. The same boy who later apologized without excuses. The same boy who had loved her quietly ever since she said no. He received his plaque from the school principal, shook hands with the director, then turned to face the crowd. They waited for a speech. He took a deep breath. And then, he spoke. I wasn't always the person you see standing here. In fact, if you knew me back in JSS 3, I was the definition of power misused. I punished people not to discipline them but to hide from myself. A few murmurs in the audience. Judith's heart skipped. But one person made me see myself. She hated me, rightfully so. But she also taught me that real strength is not about control, it's about growth. And real love doesn't hurt people. He paused. His eyes found her in the crowd. And for a full second, Judith forgot how to breathe. I'm leaving this school with a heavy heart, not because I didn't get what I wanted, but because I learned what I needed. That was all. No names. No grand gestures. Just truth. Raw, beautiful truth. As he stepped off the stage, Judith's hands trembled. She stood slowly, excused herself from the juniors beside her, and walked out of the canopy toward the far end of the school garden. He needed air. Space. Time to think. But she didn't get much of it. Because behind her, she heard footsteps. Then a voice. You don't have to run anymore. She turned. It was him. Holding his plaque. Smiling, but broken. Why are you here? She asked. To say goodbye. Israel. You don't owe me anything, Judith. I wanted to leave knowing I said it one last time. He took a shaky breath. I love you. There it was. Out in the open. Judith stepped closer. You know, she said, when I said I will never love you, I meant it. He nodded, forcing a sad smile. She smiled gently, tears brimming. People change, and so do feelings. She reached for his hand. I love you too. He froze. Judith chuckled. Don't look like you're about to faint. I just didn't expect this. I know, she whispered. And that's the best part. She leaned in and hugged him tightly. And in that moment, under the fading sun of their final day together at Kingdom High, Israel held the girl he had once hurt, and now, finally, and Judith didn't lose her power. She chose to love with it. And Israel didn't win her. He became worthy of her. You see, some love stories begin with flowers. Theirs began with fire. But in the end, it still bloomed. This is the end of the story. Would you have fallen for Israel if you were Judith? Tell us in the comment section. Thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for more.